tourism, as you know, is soaring. This year's St. Kitts Music Festival saw a 76% increase in attendance, pumping energy into the economy and pride into our people. And the minister, of course, will expound. This is what real progress looks like. It may not always make headlines, but it changes lives. Today, as your government, we commit ourselves to work more going forward. Because even as we celebrate how far we've come, we remain focused on how far we must go. This is part of our pledge to be transparent, to be present, and to be accountable. Together, as a cabinet, a government, and as a community, we are building a nation that works for everyone. Today, we are powering progress. Before I take my seat, I wish to say this to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, our beloved people. Your government remains deeply committed to walking with you every step of the way. We may not get everything perfect, but we are not perfect beings. But we will always lead with purpose, compassion, accountability, competence.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Let me start with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So far, we have had to take over the responsibility as the chair of the Council on Foreign and Community Relations with regard to CARICOM. We also have been elected to what we call the Economic and Social Committee at the United Nations for 2026 to 2028. And thirdly, at the United Nations as well, we've been elected to be the Vice President of the UN General Assembly at the 80th session that takes place this year, September. At the level of the ACS, Association of the Caribbean States, St. Kitts and Nevis has become the chair of two special committees on trade, economic development, and investment. With regard to new missions that we have opened as a country, we have had our High Commissioner in India eventually presenting his credentials to the President. And as a result of that, we now have a functional mission or embassy in Delhi in India. We've also awaiting the response for an agreement from the government of Singapore with regard to another high commission that we are opening there, and we expect that to take place over the next few weeks to months. I should also say that we have entered into discussions with countries like Saudi Arabia and in particular with Kuwait. And we also would be engaging countries like Qatar that is in the Middle East, in order to ensure that we can have proper representation for the government and people in those countries. I want to say that with regard to the Organization of American States, we've had tremendous support, especially in the area of scholarships, and not to mention, of course, the scholarships that we continue to have from Morocco and the Republic of China and Taiwan. We want to thank not only Ambassador Francis, who is our ambassador there in Taiwan, but also the outgoing ambassador of Taiwan, who, as you would have heard, has basically been recalled and to be given, I'm sure, higher duties by his government, while we await the presence of a new ambassador from Taiwan, who will be coming here shortly. In the area of investment, just to emphasize that Hotel Indigo, which we had broken ground for a few months ago, that there has now been the signing of the construction agreement between the contractor and the developer. And so we are expecting that we would have some constructions taking place very shortly, thus providing quite a number of job opportunities for our people. We continue in discussions with the developers of the Taj Hotel and Spa which is a brand, a very high luxury brand coming out of India and in Asia generally. They are in discussions with the Whitegate Development Corporation with regard to the location of this new facility, and so that continues as well. In the area of international trade, we have just come out of Namibia, as I mentioned earlier, in speaking to a question and responding to a question. But we want to make sure that we continue to have a presence in the international community on trading matters in order to ensure that we can project and request fairer trade policies and relations with St. Kitts and Nevis and those with which we are trading. Finally, on the area of industry, just to say that we eventually are looking forward for the establishment of 3 new facilities in the industrial estate, one of which almost close to completion, that is Sparrow Foods, and also another facility that will be producing solar panels. Finally, let me just simply say that we are also in discussions through the relevant entity with business people in Curacao, trying to establish partnerships with businessmen there, not only partnerships for goods, which might be more cheaply produced and thus be cheaper for our own consumers here, but also in terms of possibilities for partnership in investment. That's all for now. Thank you. Well, let me simply say, finally, that because of the importance of the CBI in terms of facilitating investment in the country, we continue as a ministry to be engaged at the level of the Foreign Affairs to ensure that discussions, especially with the United States of America and discussions with the European Union, are properly facilitated so that at the end of the day, we would still have this facility to assist us in attracting new investors and investment to our country. Thank you.
In agriculture, I think it's fair to say that we've done exceptional work. One thing that is clear, we have created the largest planting program since sugar, where we would have put last year over 60,000 bananas and plantains in the ground, over 150,000 pineapples in the ground. We just started distributing 15,000 coconut trees to be planted. Also, we have done extensive work across the areas of tomatoes, melons, peppers, and a number of other crops. Of course, you've heard about the Tabasco project as well. Altogether, collectively, we have created the largest agricultural program the country has seen since sugar production. And there's quite a bit more that we can discuss, but 2 minutes. Moving on to fisheries. As you would have heard last year, we would have seen the largest income of the sector ever, being 19.6 million. We move on to Carnival, where we would have seen record-breaking carnivals, where we had last year the largest visitorship that we've seen at over 14,000 persons. Most of the carnival troops were maxed out with the largest attendance ever, but we also saw an economic impact of over 21 million. And so I think that's worthy of note. In sports, we have been fixing all the problem left by the last government. We have repaired the Kim Collins Stadium, which was left neglected for so long. Basketball City is now underway, which has been neglected for so long, and a number of other stadiums. We built the Connery Stadium over in Connery from scratch. We have repaired the Newtown Stadium. We have repaired the Halfway Stadium. We have done some work at St. Paul's, but there's quite a bit that we have done in fixing the problems left by the last administration. But beyond that, we also brought sports back into schools. where we had cricket, football, and netball reinstituted across all primary and all high schools and even the tertiary level. And that, again, had been out for some time. So, again, I think that's worthy of note. In the Ministry of Small Business, first of all, we created that ministry back in 2022, and we have given a mandate to the sector. And over that time, we have had the chance to work with financial institutions where hundreds of small business owners would have received financing, whether it be loans or grants in different cases. But we are also now, through our Building Bankable Businesses program, preparing another cohort of small businesses to be able to be financially capable to access financing through financial institutions. Moving on to the creative economy. I think it's very clear what we've been doing in the creative economy. We've seen most of our artists traveling and touring in one way or another. Last year, we saw small acts, grandmasters, and a number of bands doing some work around the region and also the UK and the US. Last year for Miami's Carnival, we had the largest number of local performers ever in the US at one time. And we've also seen this year Dejour and others touring as well. We've seen DJ Terror touring as well. And that was one of the commitments we made, that our artists will take to the world stage. We have also designed, and we are now approaching the groundbreaking of the Creative Arts Center for the creative economy. Now, that is a $100 million investment into the country, and that should be breaking ground in a matter of months. And so with the creative economy, we've done quite a bit of work there as well. PM, how much more minutes I got? But just to say, we continue working hard across all ministries. We do our quarterly press conferences, and so I'll ask the press to just keep up to date every quarter as we continue to bring information to you, the press and the general public by extension. Thank you.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
We are delivering on our housing, as the Prime Minister indicated, that I probably should be blowing my trumpet a little bit more. 183 homes would have been completed across the various constituencies. And as a teacher, I must say, when you compare the time frame of 2015 to now, the 3 years, the former administration, they built 164 homes in that period of time. It therefore means that we have broken that record. That 183 homes has nothing to do with the 75 that is presently under construction, including the 4-apartment building that is near completion on East Street. And in West Street, you will see the 8-apartment building being constructed. In quick time, matter of fact, Honorable Samuel would be able to attest to this. Work would have started already in Harry Phipps, where we are starting the cluster homes down there. That will be an additional 50 homes in completion, Harry Phipps, Utley's Village, Sandy Point, and Race Course. So if you were to add up all of those, all being well, long before this year is done, 326 homes would be either completed or near completion, housing moving in the right direction. And we did not spend a cent to East Coast. We did not spend 1 cent to East Coast. I must bring that to our attention. Work continue in East Street as later August, the one will be completed, and right after that, we're going to take down another building, so that will be families for another 4 apartments. And the West Street project, when completed, 5 buildings with 8 apartments in each, you'll have 22 2-bedroom units, 4 3-bedroom units, 4 1-bedroom units, and we're building 4 special studio designated for the building supervisors. Those of you who are familiar with New York concept would know that we call them soup in New York, because as we build these buildings, we have to make sure that they're well maintained and persons do not vandalize them. Of course, over the time, we would have invested close to $1 million on renovation work and upgrades at the Gardens housing project. So those tenants, they are much more comfortable. Moving right along, in terms of the Newtown Community Center, in my constituency as well, we are quite aware that there's an active seniors daycare program that have been happening for quite a while now, over a year, in not only in East Basse, but in St. Peter's and also St. Paul's, and there will be the expansion of the others. We are supporting our seniors as it relates to the aging in dignity. You have seen them all over, exposed to the movies, the art and craft, the playing domino, making kites, and of course, one of the most important element of their gathering is their spiritual gathering. So they have their devotions, and pastors and other persons go in and make sure that they are in order. I mentioned earlier that the Basse High School have started, and so over in Molyneux, the Joshua Obadiah Williams Primary School construction have started on the 3 buildings over there. 3 active contractors are over there. When it comes to education, moving as swiftly as I can, this year 28 scholarships for Taiwan, the most we have ever had. And of course, the government continues to support other students who are studying at Monroe University and other universities where they can get a study grant. And of course, we continue to pay the economic costs for our students at UWI. I'm happy to report that starting in September for the first time, the Ministry of Education has a relationship with the Open University of Tanzania, where about 24 of our teachers would be given scholarships to upgrade themselves in bachelor's degree in education. And this is through our partnership as well with UNESCO. And I am happy to report that we are the first country in the Caribbean to have this arrangement. And I should also add, we are in discussion and pre-drafting of a memorandum of understanding with the Open University of Kenya, who will be assisting us with our TVET scholarships and our TVET training. And while I'm on TVET, a big deal will happen next month where the first cohort of students would be receiving their NVQ. We have had many years of talking about this. The reality is just before us. Next month, we'll have those persons receiving their certificate. Early childhood is celebrating 40 years this year, and I'm happy that under my watch, I was able to introduce vacation for our teachers and care providers in those institutions. Other than just having vacation once per year, they are now having vacations in the Easter, and we are going to continue to work through this. And of course, all of those in the private sector, they now can go and apply for their business license, so they are certified as early childhood providers or care providers, and they can now apply to the bank for loans. This has never happened before. The school upgrades continue. I think I've been repeating this over and over in terms of the dilapidated state that I would have met most of our schools. We are doing extensive work over the summer vacation to bring them up to the standard that we would want. We know we would not be able to do all that we'd like to do based on what we have. And of course, later in the year, we are going to be having the discussion as we work on our curriculum we are going to be providing or exposing our students to local history. This will be taught at all levels in our school, and this support comes from UNESCO, and I'm extremely grateful for the support that I've been getting from that office and the overseas ambassador as well, Dr. Doyle. PM, that's it for now.
We are still collating the data, but we were able this year to scan tickets to give us a more accurate account of patrons. We did have some glitches, but on the Thursday night, we had about 11,000 patrons. On the Friday night, we had close to 16,000 patrons. And on the Saturday night, we had just under 10,000 patrons. In terms of we did, like I've said, when we did our previous press conference, prior to the music festival, we did have, we are in the process of finalizing the assessment, the economic impact assessment. I just want to take this opportunity as well to thank all the volunteers who worked during, and they are still working because we're collecting data until the end of July. That is what the experts have said, and the data will then be assessed during the month of August. Thereafter, we should have the final report. So I want to thank all the volunteers who worked before the festival, during the festival, and those who continue to work now with us in having the information, the data, and everything collected so that we can have a final economic impact assessment for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis, and for, of course, for us within the ministry to see how we should be using our resources as well. And of course, for the stakeholders of the industry, the hoteliers, restaurateurs, and all of the people who continue to work within the tourism industry.
Tell me why you want to buy it. I want to sing it.
For us, within the first, it's 3 years already. It feels, like it was just the other day, but we've within tourism and labor and employment. First, in tourism, the objective really was to make the sector not seasonal, but year-round. And we've made significant strides within the 3 years. Yesterday, I came in on a flight, and this is July. And usually in July, the seats are not filled. People are going out, but the flight was filled to capacity. And that's us, all the efforts in terms of ramping up marketing, increasing lift and all the other things. Looking at our offerings, we've managed to move the sector from, usually where it ends in April. And we have these flights still coming in filled up to, let's say, August. So we just struggle with September and October. We will continue, and hopefully at some point in time, we will have year-round, flights. We have the legacy carriers coming back, so a number of them are out. They're coming. This is the shoulder period, both for airlift and for cruise. And we have the legacy carriers coming back in November. We've met with all of them. So the Deltas, the American has stayed. United Airlines continues. It ends. All of the carriers are coming back. During this time, we are going to be doing some training. We've been meeting with all the stakeholders. We have taxi and tour. We've closed off applications for persons interested in taxi and tour operations. PM, just give me some time. This is important because we get a number of calls for persons wishing to, with their applications. There's been no real training for the industry. No real training as it comes to tour and taxis, and we're putting on the training from the end of August. The days will be published. We've met with the taxi presidents as well and those who we consulted. We had over 500 applications, and based on what the law says, we've narrowed it down to about 197. So the training starts at the end of August up to October. We will have those training sessions, and we would at that time determine who we will be admitting. Now, the room stock strategy, we've been discussing that as well. We have looked with the other ministries what we're going to do to increase the room stock, because for us to get more flights, we need more rooms. We can't just tell the flights to come. And so we're looking at our room stock strategy. We are finalizing it for it to be taken to the cabinet for the cabinet to take a look at. Of course, this involves the Ministry of Investment for us to reach out to potential investors to finish a number of incomplete developments. We have in one property 350 rooms, and this was a real problem during the music festival. So we are finalizing our room stock strategy, and that should help with us getting more airlift as well. We will be working with all the stakeholders to make sure that we're ready for the season, which starts in October, both cruise and the winter season, where we get the bulk of our visitors for now. I want to take the opportunity to commend the teams who work with us in tourism, those at the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority. We just did some training for more security officers as well. 40 persons were interviewed. Well, 40 persons were successful for training. We interviewed over 100 and something persons. Those who work at the Frigate Bay Development Corporation as well, those at the Urban Development Corporation, the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, and the Ministry of Tourism. I want to take the opportunity to thank them for their hard work towards the tourism industry, and we look forward to the continued cooperation of all stakeholders.
The Bastille Desalination Plant is tremendously progressed. I think Prime Minister said 75%. We're probably closer to about 90% by now because of we are moving very, very good. And I want to commend the effort by the developer, Royal Utilities, in collaboration with Gemini, who is the designer of the whole plant. If you look out onto the ocean right now, you will actually see some very large pipes that are floating, but they will now be pinned to the seabed. And so that process is ongoing. So you see a major barge out there. That operation is actually very fascinating, and I invite people to go and have a look because if you see the pipes close up, they're almost as big as this table, while extraordinarily heavy. They have to use very large excavators and a big barge to get them out there. So it's really an exciting operation, especially for an engineer when you see these things. So we're very advanced. The different buildings that do the reverse osmosis or the filtration are largely complete. They're putting the final touches on those. And so in a few weeks' time, we will be ready to turn on the switch to provide 2 million gallons of water per day to the Bastille system. That is significant. And it will not only address the shortfalls in Bastille, but also its environs. It's going to help the St. Peter situation. And so we could have a situation where maybe from Halfway Tree, Sandy Point area, heading east all the way to Keon, could be returned to effectively 24-hour water service in a short time. I want to give strong commendation to my colleagues for when these proposals were put forward. They didn't hesitate to support the Ministry of Finance and the Prime Minister, of course, to make this major, major historic milestone for the people of St. Kitts in particular. So we look forward to that completion. We've also already laid the lines that go from the desal plant to the main storage area on Mon Peak, which has 2 million gallons worth of storage. And those pipelines have been effectively laid. I think the ends now need to be connected. So we're well advanced. Backup generation is already on site. The electricity has already been run from connecting to the power station for us to have electricity supply. So the project is going really, really well. Second part of your question is since this is now going to be complete and done in, basically finishing 3 years to address a situation that has been outstanding for the last 15 years. The next big thing is already also in progress. Earlier this year, we did what is called a airborne-based geophysical survey of the rest of the island outside of the Basti area to identify underground aquifers that we have not tapped into as yet. That survey has been completed, and I am to get an update this week. I think it is this week. Is it this week or next week? Of the final results of the analysis. Preliminary data show that there is going to be exciting news, that they have identified areas of anomalies, which are where you find water. And so once we get that report, we'll be able to pinpoint the exact locations, anywhere from Sandy Point, going westward now around to, say, Molyneux and Keon, where will be our next drilling targets. And we also did not wait until we got that information to prepare the drilling part of things. So we have already procured the driller that went out to tender some months ago. That is complete. I believe that the driller has been signed. And as soon as we get the location of the new wells, that driller will then be positioned in a few weeks thereafter to start the drilling. So we anticipate that over the next 6 months to a year, we will be doing significant drilling around the remainder of the country to then bring not only Bastia and its environs to 24-hour water service, but the entire island.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Over $80 million worth of roadworks in the first 3 years of an administration, the most ever in the beginning of an administration. We have built new roads in Stonefort, new concrete roads, that is, in Stonefort, Palmetto Point, in Boyd's View, Racecourse, Newton Ground, Rollins, St. Paul's, White House in St. Peter's, Shadwell West, and Shadwell South. We have also embarked on an aggressive resurfacing campaign from Warner Park, Bay Road East, Boyd's Village, Market Street, Spot Street, Lower Monkey Hill, Fort Lands, Wigley Avenue, Trafalgar, Otley's Village, Harris's, Limekeel Housing, Limekeel Abattoir Road area, New Road East, Southwell Drive, Industrial Side, George Street. We're right now in Sandy Point. We're heading to George Street. Heading to Infirmary Road and Trafalgar area, and heading to New Road, Clico Housing, Halfway Tree, Tabernacle, Molyneux, and Wingfield. Very aggressive. We have provided technical support to all of the ministries that require the technical support to public works, whether it is the new stadium at Connery, whether it is the Kim Collins Stadium, whether it is the MRI building for the Ministry of Health, whether it is the upgrade of schools, any of those projects that require the technical assistance. We have done so by increasing the capacity at Public Works. We have 4 Cuban engineers that are part of our team now to expand our ability to handle so many of government's projects. In energy, we are embarking on a $40 million expansion of the Needmust power plant that will upgrade by 18 megawatts worth of power. That is significant. That is more than 50% upgrade of our present capacity. We have given unprecedented support to the Nevis Island Administration, NEVLEC, and obviously from a federal perspective on geothermal in terms of identifying finance, securing finance, and supporting at all levels in our international encounters. We are now in the middle of a transaction advisory process to attract the best solar and battery energy developers from across the region and the world. That is ongoing, and you will get further input on that as we intend to close that process out shortly. When it comes to water, we have returned Keon to 24-hour water. That is all those persons who live just below the tank itself, because there are some customers that live above the tank and obviously they won't be able to, a small amount. And so we're building a new tank in Keyon to facilitate that. So Keyon, after many decades, has been returned to 24-hour water. We are building a historic 2 million gallon per day desal plant that will help aid in bringing Bastia and its environs back to 24-hour water. And we have completed this survey of potential aquifers around the entire island of St. Kitts and about to drill for wells to bring the remainder of the island to 24-hour water. In ICT, we have engaged in the development of a digital EID, such that every citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis will have a unique identifier that is linked to all of their relevant information, and only persons with the requisite authority can access that information. So for instance, when you go to a bank, say for instance, it will have access to your police certificate or your birth certificate, so you don't have to run from area to area. We have set up what is called a digital transformation management unit, who is responsible for overseeing the e-government transformation of the entire federal government, so that services can be brought to you more efficiently and effectively. In terms of post, we have started what is called a national addressing system, where we have onboarded, for ICT, I forgot to mention that we have onboarded one of the world's foremost consultants in the area of digital transformation called Cybernetica, who is out of Estonia, where the birthplace of digital government happened. And so we are glad to have them on our team. After a procurement process, they were identified as the best suit for what we want to do. In post, we are presently doing a national addressing system to finally name and provide fixed addresses for every property in St. Kitts and Nevis. We have onboarded also a very good consultant who was responsible for the development of these systems, for instance, in Washington, D.C. They recently completed one in one of the islands in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And so we're very happy to be dealing with them. They have had their initial visits, and now they're doing their recommendations of how we're going to move to a point where your address will now be 4 Ebony Brandon Street, Tabernacle, XYZ with a postal code, as opposed to around the shop by the red car. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info. If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Greetings, I'm here with Ambassador Kenneth Douglas in the Berks Sandy Point area, doing one of the projects that are listed on our resurfacing campaign in Public Works. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Ambassador for bringing these community roads to our attention. Sometimes when you're driving on the main roads and so on, even staff, they won't necessarily know all of the roads, so it takes community leaders like Kenny and others to indicate where there are some challenges in our road network. So I want to thank you for that. You have been a strong proponent. You haven't been giving me any rest, which is fine. And I gave the commitment that it will be part of our resurfacing campaign. And so after we did Southwell Drive, we've done industrial side. We're doing George Street at the moment. George Street has a lot of infrastructural additions to be done, taking up all the old pipes from underneath there that have been there for umpteen years, taking the opportunity to relay all of those pipes. So this was next in line to be done, and so we're grateful that we're here to fulfill that commitment. So tell me what your thoughts are of the road so far.
No, the road is smooth and nice. I'm also grateful that you all can come here and Public Works, and I want to thank Public Works and I want to thank yourself, Minister. And I want to thank the government of St. Kitts and Nevis also to answer the call, because you know I have been coming to you all the time, as you mentioned it, that we need this one and some others done. So I'm very, very happy, and I'm sure that the people of not just Sandy Point, but the people of this area itself, they are very, very happy also.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen of St. Kitts. Jerry here from Royal Utilities. We're at the Bird Rock desalination plant, and things are progressing very, very well. As you can see behind me, there's machines and men and barges. Everybody's working to put in the intake and the outfall pipes. Things are progressing very, very well. Over the past weekend, we worked a couple of 12-hour shifts back to back, just to avoid any interruption to any of the local businesses in the area. So we're about 90% complete right now, and hopefully in a few weeks we'll be hitting the start button. But things have gone very, very well, and we're really proud to be a part of this project for St. Kitts.
We are so happy that you really wear the flag. It means a lot to us. That your grandfathers would remember. It has a tremendous impact. Interestingly, there was a football team. We don't even got the chance to see the football team. All these youngsters who wear jerseys. You know what they taught me? They taught me this.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Going live.
Good morning, everyone. The prayer this morning is by Father Thandu Nokechi of the Anglican Church, St. Kitts Christian Council. Pastor Nokechi.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Speaker, for the honor to pray for the proceedings of today's National Assembly. Madam Speaker, allow me to recognize you, the Prime Minister, Dr. Drew, the Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Henley, honorable members of the National Assembly, according to their respective ministries. Psalm 33, verse 1 to 12 verse 11 to 12 says, "The counsel of the Lord stands forever, the thought of his heart in all generations. Happy is the nation whose God is the Lord, and the people whom he has chosen as his heritage." So let us pray. Almighty God, we thank you for the opportunity to serve the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. As I stand in the heart of this assembly, I want to first acknowledge you for waking us to see this new day and for trusting us with your work. I intercede on behalf of this house, and I humbly ask your guidance, wisdom, as the members of this house again assembled. They assemble, Lord, to deliberate and to discern on matters of importance and to take decision on behalf of all your people. Gracious God, may your Spirit inspire them to act with integrity, fairness, and deep commitment to common good. We pray for every constituency represented in this house. Give this house, O Lord, the divine power to lead your people in the way that pleases you, O Lord. Father, we humbly ask you to bless the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis with peace, prosperity, unity, and bright future for its children. Lord, we pray for the protection of both islands and the citizens and also the residents. And I now place to you, O Lord, today's proceedings into your willing hands, and further it, Lord, with your continuous help. Now I declare the house open in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Father Nokechi. You may be seated.
Confirmation of minutes.
Honorable members, on the 11th day of July 2025, I circulated minutes for the years 2022 through to 2024. They were circulated electronically. The intention was to have the minutes ventilated this morning. However, I appreciate that the minutes were sent in bulk, and I do apologize. However, we've had some technical difficulties, and the minutes had to be prepared manually. In light of such, members have asked for additional time to review the minutes, and my decision is to defer so as to give the members ample opportunity, which is their right, to review the minutes so as to not prejudice anyone. So the decision is to defer the minutes. Next item, please.
Messages from the Governor General.
There are no messages from the Governor General.
Announcements by the Speaker.
Briefly. Honorable members, my office is in receipt of notices of absence from the following honorable members: the honorable member for Nevis 9, Nevis 10, and the Honorable Senator Philip. The previously mentioned members will not be present for the proceedings this morning. That's the extent of the notices for this morning.
Presentation of papers and of reports from committees. Petitions. Government notices. Unofficial notices. Questions. Request for leave to move the adjournment of the National Assembly on matters of urgent public importance. Statements by ministers.
I recognize the honorable member for St. Christopher 8.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. With your leave, I rise just to give a short but significant update. I take this opportunity to update our country on the matter of ambulances in St. Kitts. We have an order 9 ambulances. These ambulances should have arrived already. However, our agent, TDC, a local company, has indicated that because of the Ukraine war and supply chain issues, there is a bit of a delay in getting the ambulances. They have to build them, of course, to our specifications. However, they're on the way. I would highlight that they're expected to be here by November. In the interim, we are expecting 2 ambulances that are supposed to arrive this month by next week. As we are being told, we have already received the necessary information from the brokers and so forth about those ambulances. It's critically important, Madam Speaker, that we bring in a significant fleet of ambulances so that they can cover the whole of St. Kitts in this particular matter, Madam Speaker. I would also like to add that in the Ministry of Health, we had added for the first time a chaplain to the hospital. We think that spirituality and having access to prayer and so forth are also important with respect to the whole matter of recovery and well-being. We have also added 9 new EMTs, 2 of them at the paramedic level and 7 other EMTs. So we are building out our emergency response system, and therefore wanted to update. Also want to update from the Treasury that if there's anyone who has any issue with the Treasury in terms of collecting checks, the Treasury is open, and the Treasury has uncollected checks and is continuously seeking to reach people, some of whom they cannot reach at this particular time. So I want to indicate to the people of this country that that was put out by the government, and to please seek any redress with the Treasury, as it has to comply with what it has to comply with, irrespective of any other issue. So I just wanted to put that out there. And the Treasury, of course, is right here in the middle of Bastille. What is that street called? Central Street?
Central and
yeah, Central and the corner of Central and Church Street, to have any matters resolved. Madam Speaker, I know they have been seeking to reach people, and it's been challenging. So those who know they should go to the Treasury because they have a matter there should really go there. And I reiterate those who know that they have an issue to be resolved there. So, Madam Speaker, as I said, that This will not be very long, but I just wanted to update those two very critical matters at this time.
Thank you to the honorable member for St. Christopher 8. Is there another presenter? Is there another statement? Sorry. Madam Clerk?
Personnel explanations. Motions relating to the business of the National Assembly and moved by a minister. Public business, bills, second reading.
I recognize the honorable member for St. Christopher 8, mover of the bill.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise once again to have read in this Honorable House for a second time a bill entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025. The first reading was on the 10th July 2025, and I'll also lead the debate, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this bill is a critical bill. But before I dive into the bill itself, Madam Speaker, I wish to set some context for this debate. We are living in a moment of optimism, a moment when our nation is beginning to see the real lasting fruits of togetherness, of all of us as one people. Togetherness, we are also seeing good governance and compassion in action. The work we have done together to address the issue of crime and violence from a public health perspective and community-based perspective is paying off, and it is saving lives. Madam Speaker, I want to reiterate that this is because of efforts of all of us here in St. Kitts and Nevis, because that is the only way in which it can be done. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I want to even thank the opposition for responding to the call when the call was made that everybody should be at the table. That continues to be the principle on which I would address this matter. But nowhere is this more evident, Madam Speaker, than in the success of our programs here. One of our programs, the Elevate program, a transformative initiative born out of our belief that real rehabilitation, opportunity, and empowerment must be central to any serious crime and violence matter. Just last December, we celebrated the graduation of 3 young persons from the Advanced Vocational Education Center, AVEC, young people who once stood at the margins of our society and are now poised to be its builders. We believe in inclusion, Madam Speaker. This is something that people thought could have never happened, but we have managed to get people graduated from an institution here to set ablaze their new direction. One of our at-risk men is now training carpentry. 2 young women completed studies in management and distinguished themselves at one of our leading insurance firms. Madam Speaker, the report that we got from these firms were very, very telling. They were very professional. They were always on time, actually saying that people should be given a second chance. Their story is a story of elevating people, real transformation, and real change. Madam Speaker, since we have launched, over 90 individuals from communities across the Federation have completed training in personal development, financial literacy, and career planning. Dozens more have gone on to start different types of businesses, Madam Speaker. This is a structured pathway toward dignity and self-sufficiency. In partnership with AVEC, the Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College, the Ministry of Agriculture, and TVET Council, we are equipping people with skills and hope. And as we speak, those same participants, many of whom once engaged in high-risk behavior, are now engaged in business endeavors as farmers, as mentors, as community leaders, and as teachers Madam Speaker, and the list goes on and on. Let me also say that so far we have had graduates from teaching. The teaching profession has now graduated its first member from the Elevate program, and we intend to continue to pursue this. However, Elevate is just one part of a holistic plan, part of the transformative work being carried out by this St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party administration, which continues to lead the Federation's strategic shift in how we address crime and violence, not merely as matters for law enforcement, Madam Speaker, but as a public health challenge requiring a coordinated, evidence-based, and community-centered response. Madam Speaker, this is a new approach. It is a scientifically proven approach, and it is a people-centered approach, Madam Speaker. This approach is yielding clear, measurable results, Madam Speaker. And again, it is because all of us are involved, not just some of us. Madam Speaker, I, of course, know that our people are well on board with what we seek to do. At the heart of this, Madam Speaker, is the Citizen Security Secretariat. This secretariat was accepted and voted on positively by the cabinet of this country. We have combined prevention, intervention, and rehabilitation, backed by rigorous data collection, community engagement, and interagency collaboration. Ministries, churches, youth organizations, health professionals, and the security forces, and all part of the same team, working shoulder to shoulder to build a more peaceful and prosperous nation. The Secretariat's 90-day campaign on crime and violence from a public health perspective brought new energy to this mission. Activities range from national consultations and data-driven diagnostics to family and community-centered outreach. These efforts were not cosmetic. They were, of course, critically important. They sought out the social determinants of violence, poverty, marginalization, untreated trauma, and confrontation, and confronted them head-on with services, support, and opportunities for growth. Madam Speaker, I am proud to report that the success of this public health model has attracted regional attention. Just days ago, on July 14th, I had the honor of hosting a high-level delegation from Anguilla, led, of course, by the Premier, and including senior officials from law enforcement, health, education, social development, and the leader of the opposition. In addition to all of this was the governor of Anguilla, recognizing that not just the government should be involved, but the opposition should also be at the table, along with all of the other agencies that are, of course, important for people's holistic development. Again, Madam Speaker, seeking to give people the best opportunity. The Anguillan delegation traveled to Bastia, specifically to learn from our own experience and to share experience, because we don't, of course, purport to have all of the answers. But the engagement and the exchanges are important for all of us to reach the best position. During that engagement, I made it abundantly clear that this is not guesswork, it is science. But in addition to that, this has to always be people-centered. And that is the point I want to get across, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the lesson is clear. When a nation unites behind a coherent vision, when we act with principle, science, compassion, we can change even the most entrenched patterns of violence. Madam Speaker, this is a long road. This is a long road that we all must be committed to over the long haul. This has to become part and parcel of who we are as a people and as a country. I therefore encourage every member of this honorable House, every citizen of our Federation, to continue playing their role in the collective journey for a more secured St. Kitts and Nevis. The Citizen Security Secretariat will persist in its mission to make St. Kitts and Nevis not only safer, but also more just, more inclusive, and more resilient. We are acting together as a community to make all of us safer. Madam Speaker, I speak from that perspective because when you look at the bill that we are debating here today, it deals with some punitive action. But I wanted to make it clear that we are not about punitive actions only. We are fundamentally about how can we create a St. Kitts and Nevis for our people to flourish. And that brings me to the bill before us today, the Larceny Amendment Bill 2025. Restoring community means deterring criminal activities within our communities, activities such as armed robbery. This bill therefore addresses a serious flaw in our existing law, one that has placed our sentencing structure out of step with both logic and justice. Under current legislation passed in this Honorable House last year, some caught with an unlicensed automatic firearm may face up to 40 years in prison. But if that same weapon is used to commit a violent robbery, to storm any property, our current laws cap the sentence at 20 years. It is obvious that this needs to be corrected, or rather amended. This contradiction is illogical. Therefore, this short yet important amendment corrects the inconsistency by updating Section 31 of the Larceny Act. It introduces a tiered sentencing framework for robbery offenses based on the level of threat, violence, and use of weapons. It ensures that our justice system treats robbery with firearms with the severity it demands, and that sentencing is consistent with our broader reforms under the Firearms Act. Madam Speaker, the bill set the penalties as follows. Robbery with a firearm can face life imprisonment with hard labor. Robbery with another type of offensive weapon, 40 years with hard labor. Robbery with accomplices, 35 years. Robbery involving personal violence, 30 years. Robbery without aggravating factors, 20 years. Assault with intent to rob, 15 years. It also demands the definition of firearm to include imitation firearms, restricted and prohibited weapons as defined in our Modernized Firearms Act, CAP 1905. Importantly, this amendment will harmonize our sentencing law with regional standards and international human rights obligations while respecting the structure of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court sentencing guidelines. For the first time, life imprisonment will be legally defined in this context as 50 years, giving judges clear direction and removing ambiguity. Across the Commonwealth, the offense of armed robbery is recognized as one of the most serious forms of violent crime and is accordingly met with the highest available penalties. In Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua and Barbuda, and St. Lucia, the law provides for a maximum sentence of life imprisonment for armed robbery. The same is true in major Commonwealth jurisdictions such as the United Kingdom and Canada, where life imprisonment is also prescribed. These countries have acknowledged through their legislation that robbery involving firearms or other offensive weapons cause significant psychological trauma to victims, poses a direct threat to public safety, and undermines economic stability, especially in vulnerable or tourism-based economies. Madam Speaker, it is within this context that the government of St. Kitts and Nevis seeks to modernize our sentencing laws through the Larceny Amendment Bill 2025, which we are debating now, to ensure that our penalties reflect the seriousness of armed robbery and are consistent with regional and international standards. Madam Speaker, robbery is not a victimless crime. It shatters life. It can destroy confidence. It can sow fear in communities and have long-lasting psychological impact, such as PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, etc. Increased penalties for serious crimes such as armed robbery serve as a critical deterrent function, sending a clear and unequivocal message that society will not tolerate acts of violence that threaten public safety and undermine social order. While punishment alone cannot eliminate criminal behavior, it plays a vital role in shaping conduct by raising the cost of offending and reinforcing boundaries of acceptable behavior in our communities and in our society. It is the duty of Parliament as the supreme lawmaking body to give legislative expression to society's deepest values and to articulate its collective abhorrence of crimes that inflict fear, trauma, and lasting harm on victims and communities. By setting strong and proportionate penalties, this Honorable House affirms that violence, particularly when premeditated and aggravated by the use of weapons, will be met with force, the full force of the law. So, Madam Speaker, we are balancing both things. We are creating opportunities that we want our people to take. But if one were to, of course, be an affront to the law will make sure that it does its part to bring about justice and as a deterrent to those who would engage in these activities. Madam Speaker, by strengthening the penalty for robbery, especially violent and firearm-related robbery, we are sending a message. St. Kitts and Nevis will protect its people, and those who violate the laws will definitely be held accountable. Madam Speaker, I want to wrap up my short intervention at this time by saying that even though this is from the penal perspective, and we are bringing this in line with other laws that we have passed, and to make sure everything is, of course, coherent, we stress the point that in any society to fundamentally deal with the issues of crime and violence, it has to be a people-centered, people-focused, all of society approach. And we are doing that under the perspective from a public health, as a public health matter. And so, Madam Speaker, that is what I would like to point out and to say to our people. Choose positivity over negativity. Let us not engage in these type of activities that can bring harm even to your own self. And let us all work together to ensure a safer St. Kitts and Nevis. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 7. Is there another person? I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 2.
Madam Speaker, I rise to support the bill shortly titled the Larceny Amendment Bill 2025, which seeks to revise Section 31 of the Larceny Act, Chapter 4.16. Madam Speaker, no society should accept robbery, let alone armed robbery, as a norm. It is a serious offense which requires proportionate punishment. However, Madam Speaker, I wish to take this opportunity to explain to the listening public how the proposed alteration to the sentencing structures for robberies work. So the mover of the bill spoke about life imprisonment being the maximum penalty across some jurisdictions. And hearing life imprisonment, and in our case 40 years, can sound daunting. Parliament sets the tone of the society and leaves the rest for the lawyers, competent lawyers, of course, the prosecutors, and the judges. We are the representatives of the people, and I hear no one in my constituency or elsewhere condoning robbery here in St. Kitts and Nevis. In fact, what I've heard is condemnation of the recent spate of robberies by our people, by our communities, as it should be. Madam Speaker, I wish to briefly outline how justice is arrived at during the sentencing exercise by the court. As someone who has stood beside numerous young men and women, of course, in courtrooms across this federation, I know firsthand how the sentencing exercise works, and more importantly, how lives can be redirected long before the gavel falls. When it comes to robbery, Madam Speaker, especially armed robbery, the court does not simply look at the crime in isolation. Judges are required to weigh the full picture, such as what actually happened, how serious it was, whether a weapon was used, and even how early the offender took responsibility for the actions. The law provides a structured approach to sentencing, step-by-step guidelines to ensure fairness, to ensure consistency and clarity. That's to make sure that these three things are applied in the exercise. And they're not just applied here in our courts, here in St. Kitts and Nevis, but these things are looked at consistently across the Eastern Caribbean. These rules, Madam Speaker, protect the public, but also gives real chances for rehabilitation, which is also important. It is important, Madam Speaker, for the public to understand that not all robbery offenses are treated the same. And of course, as a former prosecutor, you would know that makes sense. A man who snatches a bag without using violence or threats is not the same offender as someone who storms into a shop with a firearm and terrorizes the staff and customers. The court rightly applies different penalties depending on how dangerous or traumatic the robbery was, whether weapons were used, whether people were injured, and the degree of planning involved. This tiered approach is plainly logical and necessary. It recognizes degrees of blameworthiness while still holding every offender accountable. Madam Speaker, that is how justice works. It balances punishment in one hand with fairness in the other hand. That is why, Madam Speaker, this proposed amendment to the Larceny Act has my support. Usually, as a former defense attorney, my colleagues would tell you, I usually tend to think like a criminal defense lawyer. But this amendment, for all the reasons I outlined, has my support. The balancing of fairness with rehabilitation and fairness to the accused and of fairness to the victim. It sends, Madam Speaker, that is the proposed amendment, a clear message that armed robbery, one of the most terrifying crimes for any victim, is intolerable in a just society. Our young men and women, especially, need to hear this. You don't have to wait to see a judge to change direction. The system, once the proposed amendment is allowed, and generally shows mercy, but it also demands accountability. So, Madam Speaker, I have been in a position to have seen both the pain and the potential of our people. I continue, and I use this opportunity to continue to implore us all to choose productivity, choose positivity, as the mover of the bill said, and not destruction. Choose the classroom, choose job site, choose your community, and not a cell. With those few words, Madam Speaker, I wish this bill safe passage through this honorable House, and to indicate that I second the reading of the bill as well. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I was about to ask the question as well. Yes. Thank you for covering that. I recognize the Honourable Senator Jones.
Madam Speaker, I rise to speak briefly on the Larceny Amendment Bill 2025. This is indeed a very important bill, and I saw it fit to lend my voice to the debate. Robbery, like any other criminal activity, presents a significant threat to the safety and security of our communities. I am therefore pleased with the action we are undertaking today to address this pressing issue. Madam Speaker, I fully support the proposed amendments aimed at increasing penalties associated with robbery by extending prison sentences. This legislative amendment exemplifies our commitment as leaders to deterring such behavior and ensuring that justice is effectively served. Madam Speaker, although this bill may not provoke controversy, it is crucial to acknowledge the broader implications of robbery on victims and our society as a whole. The act of robbery entails considerable negative consequences for all the parties involved. Madam Speaker, I too would like to take this opportunity to urge the public to refrain from engaging in criminal activities. I implore you to reflect, to think about your choices and understand the consequences of your actions. Those who engage in robbery inflict substantial harm on their victims, harm that transcends mere financial loss. I know sometimes when we think about robbery, all we're thinking is, oh, you're taking money from somebody, you're taking their possession. But Madam Speaker, it goes far beyond that. The emotional, physical, psychological trauma endured by victims can be incapacitating. Madam Speaker, consider, if you will, and I probably use it as an example and I hope it doesn't happen, but Madam Speaker, no. Madam Speaker, you go to work from 8 to 8. 8 to 8, say 5-6 days a week, to earn a living for you and your family. That's an honest living. Some days you're tired, you will want to go home, but you have to stick to the task at hand because you know what your obligations entail. Now you receive your hard-earned salary. You're going home thinking about reuniting with your family, probably eating dinner, playing games. But you're on your way home, walking home, normal, only to be approached by a stranger at gunpoint. Madam Speaker, you could imagine? You could imagine what that is like any of us can imagine what that is like. In that moment, I'm certain, well, if it was me, I'd be like, my life would flash before my face. And I'm certain it has happened to individuals who are in situations such as this. But Madam Speaker, think about the profound fear of assault and the loss of your hard-earned money. The aftermath of such an encounter can leave deep, lasting scars that fundamentally change one's sense of safety and trust in our society. The impact of such a crime is undeniably transformative, eroding our peace, security, and confidence in everyday life. This, in turn, creates an atmosphere filled with fear, anxiety, and distrust within our communities. Madam Speaker, the pain and distress caused by criminal activities, particularly robbery, have been acutely felt by numerous individuals and businesses within our community. It is imperative to recognize that when a robbery occurs, especially in the presence of clientele customers, the repercussion extends well beyond the immediate theft. The trauma experienced by witnesses can endure long after the incident, significantly impacting their sense of security and overall well-being. Furthermore, the ramifications of such crimes permeate the very fabric of our economy. Small businesses victimized by robbery frequently incur substantial financial losses. It jeopardizes jobs and ultimately the livelihoods of families reliant on those businesses for income. These adverse effects can compel businesses to close, relocate, or alter their operations, negatively affecting the local economy. Madam Speaker, when we disrupt commerce and undermine trust and safety, how can our community and economy prosper? These are questions that we have to ask ourselves before we engage in criminal activities. Madam Speaker, I want to share a personal experience. And when preparing, I thought about it and I was like, I don't know if I have the guts to do so because I don't want to become emotional. But I remember when I was in New York and my friend and I, we went to the supermarket. We were buying groceries, normal, just going to the supermarket, buying groceries. And imagine you're there buying groceries, only to start hearing loud voices and hearing police. It's police, and they're saying, get on the floor, get on the floor. And in your mind, you're like, wait, what is happening? So we are there, police coming and get on the floor, get on the floor. So we're just reacting to what we're hearing. My friend and I, not knowing, just on the other aisle, there are gunmen right there in the supermarket. Person said they came to steal. Person said they were running from other, I guess, gang members. I'm not sure. But the thought of being there in that moment was scary. So I can't imagine if I'm in a position and somebody's actually standing next to me with a gun pointed at my head. I remember that to this day. And even when I went home after that incident, days pass, months pass, and you remember it, you relive it. It doesn't escape your mind. And believe it or not, when other incidents happen, you're reminded of it, and then you have to continuously relive in the moment. We have to think about the mental harm that we cause to others. Madam Speaker, I just want to take this opportunity to encourage citizens and our business owners to take proactive measures to enhance personal and institutional safety. It is vital not to underestimate the potential risk to financial and personal security. Investing in security systems, hiring qualified personnel, or enhancing surveillance measures represents prudent steps, even if they require additional expenditure. And I know the government assists by providing concessions to some of these items, so I'm encouraging everyone to take advantage of that opportunity. Madam Speaker, to those who are contemplating engaging in robbery, armed robbery, I implore you to reconsider the legal consequences, such as life imprisonment, the social stigma, the loss of freedom, and the risk posed to yourself and others are not worth pursuing this crime or any crime. Madam Speaker, let us collectively strive to foster an environment in which individuals can confidently navigate their daily lives without the persistent threat of robbery or any crime. Through collective action and a shared commitment to safety, we establish a flourishing society for all. With these few words, may it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the Honorable Senator Jones. Is there another presenter? Is there another presenter? I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 7.
With your leave, I rise to make a brief intervention. I had hoped that in this presentation, certain pertinent matters would have been addressed. Clearly, all of us want a peaceful society, and clearly all of us will work to achieve it. The questions are the hows we will achieve what all of us are agreeable to are matters for important debate. And I heard the mover of the bill saying that it is punitive. I agree with him. In fact, I would say very punitive a bill to come to the country at this time when people are already feeling the effect of the punishment from this government. Another punishing bill, Madam Speaker. I had hoped that we would have clarity in terms of the rationale for this bill at this particular moment in time. I heard what I can perceive to be a bit of it coming from the member for number 2. In her presentations, she did say that there have been an uptick, paraphrasing, an increase in incidents of robbery. And I ask, beyond the hearsay, what are the statistics? In a critical matter like this, we are proposing a term of life imprisonment with hard labor. What are the statistics that one would bring to the country as a whole to help us understand why this most punitive prescription would come in a bill? A term of life imprisonment with hard labor. Most of the time in this come, it is murder. We understand. Perhaps we may not always agree, but the idea of you take someone's life, you suffer the consequences. We understand some of that. We do not always agree. And we must paraphrase and juxtapose that against the being armed with a firearm and committing a felony. Doesn't say murder here. It intends to rob, assaults with intent to rob and conviction. It's liable to a term of life imprisonment with hard labor. I don't understand what that means and how this could come about at this particular juncture in time. Because when we consider too the concept being touted of proportionality, life in the context, for example, of murder, and life in the context of being used with the intent to rob and so on, committing a felony and so on, we ask the question, where is the proportionality involved here? Because you see, we can't basically commit the young person to life imprisonment. And at the same time, we want to propose the idea that we are giving them a second chance. Second chance at perishing. The young man from McKnight, from St. Paul's, from anywhere and any part of the country. Proportionality, Tabernacle, Mansion, Phillips. This is what the government has here being proposed for them. I find that very challenging. And I ask again, what is the basis? Where are the statistics justifying this need? But beyond the statistics, I ask, where is the science that indicate that these harsh penalties anywhere brought any significant reduction to crime? Or does it let them, if they live long enough to come out, does it make them hardened criminals when they come out? And there's a range of scientific work which says this punitive approach to criminal justice has not worked and will not work. That is what the science in the main has said to us. So I fail to understand, what is this about? Is it that some people figure certain people are jailbound, so we will deal with them in a certain way? The poor people in George Street, the poor people in Challengers, the poor people everywhere who by every statistic are those who are most caught in these situations. They must face a term of life imprisonment with hard labor. Those whose children may never be caught in this, they are not being contemplated in these kind of legislative framework. We all agree that we must do all that we can to assist, but can't be excessive. You can't be excessive. And that notion of proportionality is a critical one in any criminal justice system. And I believe that all of these, I agree with the mover, imprisonment, 40 years, 35 years. Now, the proportionality test, in my view, is not being met appropriately with this thing. And how this rehabilitation is going to take place when you are serving 50 years and 40 years and 35 years is another matter. Yes, we condemn the spate of robberies, but justice must have balance and proportionality. You must look at all, both victims, importantly, the society at large, and the kind of society we are attempting to build. And I raised this other issue because somewhere I heard a joke about good governance. And I asked, where is it? Where is the consultative approach to democracy and legislation? No one has said to us, for example, we consulted and we have had the input of the Bar Association, for example. This legislation has benefited from that input. There was a time when the Bar Association had life. The Bar Association wrote to government in the past and said, wherever there is legislation, give us time to look at it so that we can add our 2 cents to every bit of legislation coming to the Parliament. Recognize that there is no monopoly on wisdom. Because in the bar and in the wider community, there are persons who are dealing with these matters every day. Where is the involvement in the bar? Is the bar in existence? Is it dead? Does it have no voice? And these. But it's not just the bar. We are hearing that there is an uptake in the spate of robberies. So business people, business entities, have they been consulted? Do they have a view in this? Victims, do they have a view in this? Those themselves who have been involved in robberies, do they have a view? Or this is just a closed shop in relation to this particular matter? The effort to ensure that we have the least number of victims of crime. It's a laudable one. How we achieve that particular goal require better consideration from the legislative arm of society. And this is not reflected here in terms of what has been put. There is no evidence for this kind of, punitive, I agree with the mover, kind of sentence, and what positive impact they will have. Because some of the penalties are already high, and yet we are hearing that you still have a spate, an uptick, an increase in these robberies. So he tells me, just on the face of that alone can't work. And a lot of other things are needed if we are going to address the complexity of crime. Madam Speaker, I think that just want to read one particular matter here, looking at the link between justice and crime. The principle of justice between crime and penalty.
Honorable Member,
yes,
can you quote what you are reading? That needs to be placed on the record.
Okay.
For authenticity. Thank you.
You can just Google, Madam Speaker, I Google justice between crime and penalty. The principle of justice between crime and penalty emphasizes that the punishment for a crime should be proportionate to the severity of the offense. It goes on, not going to take too long, it just re-emphasizing. In essence, the concept of justice between crime and penalty is a complex one with different perspectives, and today we are hearing different perspectives on what constitutes a just and fair outcome. And they look at some of these classifications with respect to the issue of justice. While retribution focuses on punishment for past wrongs, restorative justice seeks to repair harm and prevent future offenses. And the broader goals of criminal justice include deterrence and rehabilitation. The principle of proportionality ensures that penalties are appropriate to the crime, reflecting a balance between punishment, justice, and the needs of the victim and the community. Madam Speaker, I think this captures the essence of the issues I'm attempting to raise. This life imprisonment can't fit, in my view, the proportionality test. That balance. And the research has really shown that these harsh punishments, which are there, term of life, 40 years, 35 years, they don't lead to rehabilitation. They do not work. My advice would be for this bit of legislation, with all the emphasis on punishment, be revisited. My advice, in the absence of any information, that there has been consultation with learned people here, there, and everywhere if needs be with respect to this bill, that we could have a relook of that and get other opinions that would help us in having a model legislation. The case has not been made, no statistics have been presented. The science doesn't indicate that this is a rational response. And the legal wisdom on this, in my view, seems very much lacking in accordance with what we are attempting to achieve. So, to close, Madam Speaker, we can't always want to lock up people, can't always bring out the wickedness in us to see the suffering of other people for their life, for 40 years, for 30 years. What does that do to the society? Small, interconnected societies of victims on one hand, and those who are caught up in this web of crime. So I raise those issues, and they follow too in relation to the other bit of legislation. Because the answer is, put them away for life. That seems to be. It's not the right answer. And when persons begin to see and perceive the wickedness of the arm of the government in relation to them, they are going to find ways of ensuring that the wicked arm of the state does not come to them. And so, it is not a good look. It's not a good look. It is good to attempt to do something, but what we are attempting to do must make sense, and it must be helpful, and it must be defensible, and I find this piece of legislation lacking. Madam Speaker, I would have to take a leave now but return, because there are other bits of legislation, including the judge-alone trials, about which I want to add my voice to the debate for the benefit of the wider society. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 7. I recognize, I recognize the Honourable Attorney General.
May it please you, Madam Speaker, I rise extremely briefly to provide my contribution to the debate on the Larceny Amendment Bill and to support it. I think I'll start, Madam Speaker, by saying that a maximum sentence of life imprisonment for armed robbery, maximum, is quite usual. In fact, as the mover of the bill has indicated, our Commonwealth Caribbean brothers and sisters have implemented that already. So maybe they are wicked too. In Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, all have a maximum of life imprisonment for armed robbery. So do our Commonwealth partners, the United Kingdom and Canada, and many other countries throughout the world. And I'm going to clarify, because my job today as Attorney General in this House is to clarify to our people what this amendment actually does. I also want to educate There are very limited offenses that attract a maximum sentence of life imprisonment. Murder doesn't attract life imprisonment, you know. Murder attracts a maximum sentence in St. Kitts and Nevis of being hanged at the gallows. That is still on the books. So the other serious offense that attracts the maximum sentence of life imprisonment in St. Kitts and Nevis is rape. Rape is the greatest violation that can exist to a woman. Actually, rape is not considered, it's considered only of a female. You cannot. Well, we could consider that, bringing it in line with international standards. So there's no prejudice to anyone. But you can understand that, Madam Speaker. And the role of Parliament in setting sentences is to reflect what society feels about particular crimes. Now, I don't think anybody would argue that a maximum sentence of life imprisonment for rape is inappropriate in our society. There may be other societies where they'll argue that. There are some societies where the maximum penalty is death. There are some societies where they take what caused the rape and chop it off. But in our society, we have decided that if you choose to engage in sexual conduct with a woman without her consent, then the maximum penalty is life imprisonment. And what we're coming here to do today is to say, in following to what we did last year, Madam Speaker, is to say, when you use a firearm in the commission of a robbery, when you take that decision, society frowns greatly upon it. And the maximum penalty should be life imprisonment. Maximum. If you allow me, Madam Speaker, to just go through the amendments and say what was before. The maximum penalty for robbery prior to the proposed amendment was 20 years. In a decision of our High Court dated June 11, 2025, just a couple weeks ago, the sitting judge had this to say in his sentencing decision, and I quote, "To draw attention to the low maximum of 20 years for armed robbery in St. Kitts and Nevis, in many other Caribbean jurisdictions, the maximum is life, and a much longer sentence would follow. Recent legislation changes in St. Kitts and Nevis since May 2024 make possessing an illegal firearm liable to 30 years just for having it, meaning it is more serious to have it in your car than to use it to threaten to cashiers, to rob tills and vaults. The government may wish to increase the maximum for armed robbery as a matter of consistency and common sense." And logically, that is what we're doing today. But it's not just increasing, Madam Speaker. The amendment is seeking to rationalize the robbery, which was established, continued as an offense in our law in an act from 1944, the Larceny Act of 1944. It was slightly amended in 1998, and now it is being modernized. What the amendment does, Madam Speaker, has categories of offenses of robbery, and I'll go through each one. The first category is a person who, being armed with any firearm, as defined under the Firearms Act, robs or assaults with intent to rob. Assault can mean threaten. If you have a firearm, you threaten and say, "Give me the money in the cash register," that's considered that. Any person commits a felony and on conviction is liable to a term of life imprisonment with hard labor. That's the maximum. The second level is a person being armed with any offensive weapon, not a firearm, robs, or assaults with intent to rob any person, commits a felony, and on conviction is liable to a term of imprisonment of 40 years. So you go with a machete into a store and you attempt to rob, or you do rob. Actually, no, this is not attempt. This is actually robbery. Then the maximum is 40 years. With respect to if you go, any person being together with one other person or more, so if you go as a group and rob or assault with intent to rob any person, commits a felony and conviction to a maximum of 35 years. Any person who robs and at the time of or immediately before or immediately after such robbery uses personal violence to any person, commits a felony, and on conviction is liable to a term of a maximum of 30 years. If you rob any person, generally, the maximum is still 20 years. And if you assault any person with intent to rob, the maximum is 15 years. So what the amendment is seeking to do is to rationalize the different types of robbery that can occur. Also, what it does, and I think this is the point that I need to clarify, these sentences are not the final sentences if you go before court. They're the maximum sentences. So, for example, in the case that I referenced, the quote from the judge, it was a robbery in which the maximum sentence was 20 years and the actual sentence was 11 years. The Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court has created sentencing guidelines for different types of offenses. The court must consider all of the various factors in the offense in determining what the sentence is. However, when a law is silent on what life imprisonment is meant to be, the court considers that to be 30 years. So the amendment does one other thing. It says, effectively, in alignment with the firearm amendment of last year, that if you can be in possession of an AR-15 rifle and the maximum sentence is 40 years, if you use an AR-15 rifle and enter into a supermarket and point it at a cashier, or God forbid, use it in the supermarket to cause a stir and rob the till and go into the safe, then the maximum sentence has to be more than the maximum sentence from you just possessing it. So it is a logical flow of seriousness of offense, and that is what the amendment is proposed to do. It is not something, Madam Speaker, that is novel. It is not something that is strange to the Commonwealth. It is actually more common in the Commonwealth for armed robbery to attract a maximum sentence of life imprisonment than it isn't. So I hope that I've explained what the purpose and reason of the amendment is, and it is the job of the people in this honorable house to set the pulse or bring the pulse of the people into this house and reflect it by way of legislation. Madam Speaker, I know there's someone in this house who does not want an increase in any sentence. They've made that clear. Maybe that he's reflecting conversations he's having with people he interacts with. However, I cannot believe that there's anybody else in this house who has had conversations with persons who think that entering into a shop with a firearm and putting it to someone's head is not one of the most serious of offenses in our country. And that is the task that is being done today. We will not tolerate in St. Kitts and Nevis, similar to Barbados, similar to Antigua, similar to St. Lucia, similar to the UK, similar to Canada, and all the other countries in the world that treat armed robbery as one of the most serious offenses that you can have in any society. And that is what the bill is intended to do. It's very short, it's very simple, but it is truly reflecting what will not be tolerated in our society, Madam Speaker. And with those few words, I'll take my seat. May it please you.
Thank you to the Honorable Attorney General for your presentation. Is there another presenter? I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to lend my voice to the debate that is before this Honorable House for the bill entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025. Madam Speaker, I rise to, of course, give my support to the bill tabled, Larceny Amendment Bill 2025, which seeks to revise Section 31 of the Larceny Act, Cap 4.16. And the objective is very clear. We want to ensure that the law treats armed robbery with the gravity it truly deserves in the context of an overall crime fighting strategy or citizenship or citizen security, which has so far yielded good results. And we hope that with the participation of the entire country, that we continue to grow from strength to strength as we deal with the situation of crime as a public health issue. So, as the mover would have mentioned, we are looking at this holistically in terms of how we are dealing with the roots of crime from the very beginning, how we are interacting with our children, our schools, the society. But we also need to put in the framework to assist in that particular strategy, the framework to ensure that where there are the anomalies that do not get the or did not come through the system such that they are deterred from criminal activity, that there is also a catch net for those situations. Now, Madam Speaker, no society should ever really come to accept robbery and, in fact, armed robbery as part of the norm. We should not minimize it. I think the member opposite, the senator opposite, spoke about her own experience. And the truth is, Madam Speaker, that the trauma inflicted upon victims is not merely sometimes just physical or even financial, but it cuts deeply into their psychological well-being for the rest of their lives in many situations. Research in victimology confirms what many of our constituents already feel and know, that being held at gunpoint, even without physical injury, leaves long-lasting scars. Victims often suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and even fear of leaving their own homes. Some are never the same again. Robbery also shakes the trust, of course, of the society. We have to protect our commercial interests, the tourism sector, our people, vital lifelines in our economy. A single well-publicized armed robbery can cause all sorts of reputational damage that ripples far beyond the victim, affecting businesses and deterring future investment. Our approach will always be wholesome. But there's a member who rose today, Madam Speaker, who, as I understand it, is against this bill of instituting a maximum limit of life, not a mandatory or automatic imposition, but giving the court and the justice system the space to evaluate the severity of a crime and giving it the maximum of life imprisonment, as does many of our other Commonwealth jurisdictions across the globe. This bill really gives the court the flexibility that if it is found that maybe you knew no better, you're 17, 18, 19-year-old, first-time offender, you use a paper gun, nobody do anything, maybe they fight you down, this maximum penalty does not apply. But in the situation where a hardened criminal, repeated offender, may be convicted of crimes before, enters a property and traumatizes a section of our community without remorse and without regard to life, the court has the ability to properly evaluate what an appropriate sentence will be, because the legislation now gives the flexibility of maximum of life imprisonment. But it's really interesting that the member mentioned nothing about that, because of course the member always has a particular agenda. He spoke nothing of the ability for the court to have the flexibility. Just spoke about the maximum, because as usual wanting to have headlines. But something very critical I heard the member say. He asked, where is the research? Where is the science? And he went on his phone and do a quick Google search, find something that he couldn't read properly, and counted that as some research. But let me provide some research with sources.
Listen to what AI says. Go ahead.
Sorry? Yes, yes, of course. And I want to especially stress on the part of the trauma that armed robbery causes on persons in this instance. And these are well-established research and analysis on armed robberies. One, of course, I mentioned it, post-traumatic stress disorder. Armed robbery often leads to PTSD, with symptoms including flashbacks, nightmares, emotional numbness, hypervigilance. Some supporting research by Resnick H. et al. In 1993, published in the Journal of Traumatic Stress, found that victims of violent crimes such as armed robbery were significantly more likely to develop PTSD than those who experienced non-violent events. Another one is long-term anxiety and depression. Victims frequently develop generalized anxiety, depression, and panic disorders following an armed robbery, especially in this case when a weapon is brandished. We have Kilpatrick et al. In 1985 found that among robbery victims, there is an increased risk of both clinical depression and substance abuse disorders lasting months to years after the crime. This is found in Victimization and Post-Crime Psychological Distress, National Crime Victimization Survey. We have impaired workplace functioning. Victims often struggle to return to work, particularly when the robbery took place at their place of work. In South Africa, for instance, a study had shown that bank employees who experienced armed robbery and this is from the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology of 2006, found that 63% reported reduced productivity and 41% considered quitting their jobs due to persistent fear of another attack. Social withdrawal and mistrust. Armed robbery victims often report difficulty trusting others, avoiding public spaces, relocating their homes or businesses due to sustained fear. A research that supports this is from Janoff Bullman in 1992. Shattered assumptions show that victims of violent crime often lose their basic sense of safety and trust in the world, which results in chronic social withdrawal. Impact on small businesses. Business owners and staff who experience armed robbery may close their businesses, reduce opening hours, install costly security measures, which affects, of course, their local commerce. We recall, even in our neighbor, St. Lucia, in 2018, several tourism-dependent shops in Castries closed temporarily, citing staff trauma. We also have secondary victimization and community fear. Trauma is often not simply limited to the direct victim, Madam Speaker. Employees, customers, and community members also suffer from vicarious trauma and heightened fear of crime. In 2013, the Australian Institute of Criminology, doing a report on robbery in Australia, found that armed robbery produces disproportionately high level of community fear relative to its frequency due to its visible, violent, and unpredictable nature. So, Madam Speaker, there is the basis of why we want to append the gravity that we are to the issue of armed robbery. Apart from, yes, as the Attorney General said and the mover said, to align our laws in our whole attempt at our citizen security, where we have, if you possess an armed weapon right now, you could actually get more years than if you use it in a crime. While we have to align those, it's important to consider the impact that this particular crime has on its victims. Now, an important point must be made, Madam Speaker, that this bill has proportionality and it has modernization. It is not draconian because it did not mandate a maximum penalty. It gave the flexibility, as I mentioned before. So what it does not do is impose anything mandatory. Rather, it updates the maximum penalty so that courts are properly empowered to respond proportionately to the worst kinds of robbery, especially those involving firearms. And we heard this structure, but we can speak about it again. This proposed structure is tiered. So robbery with a firearm, life imprisonment. With an offensive weapon, 40, involving accomplices, 35, personal violence, 30, without aggravation, 20, assault with intent to rob, 15. And the new law, of course, aligns, as I mentioned, with the Firearms Amendment Act of 2024, which prescribes up to 40 years for the possession, up to 40 years of possession of an automatic weapon. It corrects the legal inconsistency there. It made no sense that a man could receive a stiffer sentence for possessing the illegal gun than using it to terrorize shopkeepers or citizens. So the judicial discretion remains. Madam Speaker, I know when some hear life imprisonment, they may worry that we're being overly harsh. But let us be clear. Life imprisonment is the ceiling, not the floor. Judges still have that full discretion. Our courts apply the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court sentencing guidelines, which ensures consistency, which ensures fairness, which ensures transparency. So a judge must consider the circumstances of the offense, whether a weapon was used, the extent of planning, the harm to the victim, the offender's criminal history, remorse, cooperation, whether the offender pleaded guilty early. There are examples of cases where a court would have reduced a sentencing starting from a point of, let's say, 15 years, and it goes down to 6 years when it took into account an early guilty plea, clean record, mitigating circumstances. That is justice in action, Madam Speaker. That is justice that is proportional, measured, and humane. The bill doesn't replace that process, it supports it. And any attempt by the member, in particular from number 7, to scare the populace into thinking that there is some wicked act taking place, that is simply for political posturing, and no real care for joining in our journey to ensure we do a wholesome approach to our crime-fighting agenda. Madam Speaker, you would have heard, comparatively, many of our sister jurisdictions already prescribe life imprisonment for armed robbery. Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Lucia, even Canada and the United Kingdom, because we come from the same body of law in the Commonwealth. So now it is time for St. Kitts and Nevis to join this modernization and to join the regional harmonization of our legal framework. So, Madam Speaker, I would probably want to end with a message to our young people and to anybody in particular. I want to echo the sentiments, of course, shared by, I think, the member opposite senator, that encourage that we make positive choices. I want to say to anybody listening, whether you're a young man, you're a young lady, middle-aged, whatever your age may be, or your sex. The law may offer you mercy, but it will also demand accountability. Choose differently. Before you stand in front of a judge, I remember singing about these things in some of my music. You say I should go back to doing some more singing? I wonder if Madam Speaker will allow me to sing in here. But before you stand in front of a judge, choose the classroom. Choose a trade. Choose the community center, not a cell. Redemption is still possible, but so is responsibility. I've always said that it takes so much to plan and execute a crime. It ain't easier to just go and look at a job, show up 8 to 4, do what you have to do, because the amount of things you have to go through when you engage in any sort of criminal activity. I mean, you have to be literally looking over your shoulder every moment of the day. You have to be wondering if this is going to be the person that catches you, or this is the person who recognizes you, and so on. So I want to encourage, we are providing new pathways for you to be a well-meaning, positive, contributing citizen to this country. And I want to take this opportunity to commend the Minister of National Security and the Prime Minister for his leadership on citizenship or citizen security. There is a stark difference when you hear a prime minister stand and say that this solution is because of all of us. It is something we have been clamoring for years. I remember in opposition when we were asking that this must be a whole of society approach. We have never sought to politicize the issue because we understood then and we understood now that while government is a key part of the puzzle, it is not the entire puzzle. It requires an all of society approach. And while we are still not perfect, while we still are improving the way we are doing things, I want to commend this cabinet under the leadership of the Prime Minister for taking this approach where we understand and we treat it as a public health issue so that we can get to the root. Just like when we're doing health research, we're not only interested in putting a plaster or treating the end result. We want to get to the cause, the root, the lifestyle. So in order to prevent the early onset of, I'm getting out of my league here, but diabetes and hypertension and all of these things, there is a lifestyle that can help to mitigate that. That's correct, Mr. Prime Minister? And if you are able to treat those things from early years before, you can minimize the onset, delay the onset, you can control it. And that is what this public health, taking it from the public health angle, allows us to do. It goes deep beyond. And again, I sang a song about that many years ago, a song I called Strange Land. You always say you're going to have to listen to it? Strange Land, where I spoke about the same basic crime situation where crime situation and other things, how things had changed. And where some people were placing the blame. At that time, I said people placing the blame on politicians. But I said, this is a long time, it's 20 years ago. I said it has gone way beyond that. And I want to commend this administration for taking the bold step that in the face of political shenanigans to set up obscure, what do you call them? Obscure systems to pay and deal with it at the end. This administration has said no. Opposition, government, police, community, church, school, everybody must be a part of this. And so adjusting the laws is just another portion of that. Not meant to be any silver bullet, but to be part of a whole framework. And with that, Madam Speaker, may it please you.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 3. Is there another presenter? I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 6.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to say a few words as we debate this bill shortly entitled the Larceny Amendment Bill 2025, and use this opportunity, of course, to lend my own support to this piece of legislation, which is intended, of course, to not only deter but to seriously discourage and also at the same time encourage our citizens to realize how important this matter of criminal activity is in St. Kitts and Nevis and how seriously the government of the day wishes to treat it. Of course, the bill, Madam Speaker, is an amendment of what would have been an established piece of legislation for several years. In fact, it speaks to the amendment of Section 31, which is being reviewed, of the Licensing Act, Chapter 4.16, to significantly enhance what is the maximum, and I think we need to emphasize this, the maximum penalties for robbery, particularly armed robbery, as the case may be. As the Attorney General and those who have gone before me have said, it is really intended to bring sentencing in line with the heightened penalties for firearm-related crimes under the Firearms Act, Cap 19.05, as amended by the Firearms Amendment Act number 4 of 2024. In other words, which we ourselves would have had an opportunity to amend. And of course, it aims to correct the anomalous situation, according to the Attorney General, where possession of an illegal firearm is already attracting a more severe sentence than its use in the violent robbery. I believe that this is critical. I've had the opportunity, Madam Speaker, to be provided with some statements that are attributed to one of our learned judges serving here in St. Kitts and Nevis. In fact, we've been told that Justice Morley, King's Counsel, explicitly noted that many, not one or two, many Caribbean countries or jurisdictions impose life imprisonment. Many already are imposing life imprisonment. And I think that this is significant. Already imposing life imprisonment for armed robbery, and describes St. Kitts and Nevis' sentencing ceiling as, I quote, a matter of inconsistency, end of quote. This, I believe, is part and parcel of the reason that we are here today debating this particular piece of legislation. Because, as those who have gone before me, learned member for number 2 in that particular field of professional practice would have recognized, would have said, robbery, especially when committed with firearms, can cause profound psychological trauma to victims. And the member for number 3 went through a series of psychological effects that armed robbery would have had on people who were victims. Not only people who are victims, but even people who are observing what was happening at the time of the robbery with arms, with firearms. Even those have become traumatized. And so we are not here to play down the effect of armed robbery on people's behavior. From the time they would have seen it, they would have been victims affected for life. And that is why we, as a very concerned government, are here in the parliament today. There are more people who are good than those who are criminals. And I am not one of those who will come here having all of the concern that I have for rehabilitation of persons with criminal activity and intent. I also have to think of people like me, non-violent. I am part of the billions of people who are non-violent. So I'm talking about me. I am not talking about he, about me. And that is what is so critical here today. And as I sat there, Madam Speaker, and heard the debate unfolding, I wondered, why is it that we have a conflict on this particular matter? The judges tell you, you are behind the rest of what is happening in the Caribbean. Look at it here.
Honorable Member, do you have the date of the judgment? That would provide further clarity.
Well, June 11th, yes, sorry. June 11th, 2025. Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is critically important as well. And it says here, other Caribbean and Commonwealth jurisdictions have legislated a maximum life sentence for armed robbery. So, when we hear about where is the statistic, where is the research, this is real facts. You don't have to go nowhere around the world to look for it. It's here, in this country, said by one of our judges. Barbados, life imprisonment. Maximum sentence for armed robbery. Maximum in Barbados. We are aliens to the rest of the world. We are part of the world. Jamaica, life imprisonment. Trinidad and Tobago, life imprisonment. United Kingdom, common law, life imprisonment. Canada, life imprisonment. Antigua and Barbuda, life imprisonment. St. Lucia, life imprisonment. So what member number 7 tried to say? This is what is commonly the practice. And jurisdictions are moving more and more into this direction. After all, innocent people need to be protected. That is what it is all about. And so, Madam Speaker, we are here to ensure that there is no question in anyone's mind about our seriousness in tackling crimes. We want to build a just and progressive society. We want people to come and feel comfortable that when we would have invited them to invest and people are in their hotels, people walking from the strip, maybe a little high, on their way down the boulevard to Marriott, high from alcohol, of course. I don't think that anyone would think otherwise. they should be free to go to their hotels, walking along the road. Whether it is in St. Paul's or the Bay or Parsons, walking along the road, having their good feeling, going home without fear of being robbed with a guy with a gun, or a woman as well. They have them as well. And so, Madam Speaker, we want to build a just and progressive society. We want to make sure that all of our citizens at all times feel comfortable. And so we are discouraging criminal activity, especially that which is carried out by a weapon. I believe that this is so critical that the point needs to be made. And so, as I sat there, I didn't want to really speak much. I asked myself, why number 7? Why? Why going on that road? They say, I trained him well. I didn't train him to do that. Why go down that road? You know exactly what this society calls for. We want a crime-free society. Why going down that road, Tim? That's what I asked it myself. I don't know who named Tim, but I asked myself, why going down that road, Tim? Why going down that road, member for number 7, in his presentation? And I said to myself, after all, it can't be because of politics. Because it is just inconsistent. The member for number 7 was a prime minister. So why are you appearing as if you want to challenge the entire parliament because it is trying to ensure that there is no mistake in one's mind as to where the parliament and government stands on fighting crime? That is what it is about. Why would anyone want to glorify criminals in St. Kitts and Nevis? Why? Why would you want to glorify criminals? Why? I just don't understand it. Because it doesn't suit him politically. That's the whole point. It can't be because of petty politics. But how much votes he can get so? You can't do that to people. People are traumatized for life, having been victims of armed robbery. We're coming to this parliament today to make sure we can stamp it out, discourage people, and the number 7 member is glorifying it. It can't work like that. I believe, Madam Speaker, that we have to be very careful when we speak in this parliament in attempting to convince yourself that people out there following me, and I have to find something to say for them to follow me. They ain't gonna follow you with that. Not that. People want to be safe. We have reached thus far in tackling the criminal activity in the country. We must not encourage anybody with a gun to rob people and think they're going to get away with it. And as all who have said before me, have spoken before me said, this is the maximum sentence. This is not where you start. This is where you end, the maximum sentence. And you still have the jurors to say guilty, and then the judge, in his sentencing, having laid out in the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court the guidelines for sentencing, after all, let them do their job. Those are my words. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 6. Is there another presenter? I recognize the honorable member for St. Christopher 8, the mover of the bill, to do his wrap-up.
It's okay. Okay. Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise to wind up the debate on a bill shortly entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025. Madam Speaker, I want to thank all those who have contributed to the debate on this most important bill. This, Madam Speaker, I came here to present and to lead the debate on. I did not expect that a bill like this would have any tinge of controversy. This is so straightforward that you come in, you lay it before the House, everybody would have a say if they wish to, and basically this would pass through without any type of difficulty. But what I've heard, Madam Speaker, is appalling. It's appalling that there are suggestions that somehow some people are being targeted. Are they saying that because you come from George Street, you're going to rob? The people of George Street are better than that. Are you saying that because somebody comes from McKnight, they believe in armed robbery? How can you cast such dispersion on communities? The people of McKnight, I can tell you the vast majority of people of McKnight are good people. Yeah. Decent people. Nobody should ever intimate that because a certain person is from a certain address that somehow they are a criminal. Madam Speaker, that is totally unacceptable. The representative for constituency number 2 is here, and she's appalled. She was born there, grew up there, and representing the people there. And to be calling McKnight's name in a way that it's synonymous with armed robbery is totally disappointing. I want to say to the young men in McKnight that we believe that the vast majority of you are good people, that you don't believe in armed robbery. I want to say to the people of McKnight that you are a wholesome community and continue to work to be a better community as all communities should. Casting aspersions on the people of St. Paul's. What does this mean? That because somebody may not have all the financial resources that somehow they believe in armed robbery? That because you come from an area that is not rich, that you don't have principles? Out of order. You can't do that to communities and to people, Madam Speaker. I am passionate about this because in countries in the same Caribbean, if you apply for a job and your address is of a certain type, you can't get the job because there are people thinking that because you come from there, you don't have any values, no respect, no this, no that. You are no good. That does not apply to St. Kitts and Nevis. From any community you come from in St. Kitts and Nevis, you are an upstanding citizen. That is how I see it until you prove otherwise. So I condemn those statements, Madam Speaker. And to the people of McKnight, to the people of George Street, to the people of St. Paul's, I do not prescribe or subscribe to the statement that because this is your address, that somehow you are prone to violence. I don't subscribe to that, Madam Speaker. And therefore, I condemn those statements vehemently. I want to say, Madam Speaker, again, this bill has multiple reasons. One, to bring it in alignment. If you have a gun, your penalty for holding a gun can go up to 40 years. But if you rob somebody, it's only 20 years with the same gun. That can't make sense to anybody. And so, to bring everything in alignment, it only makes sense that we should increase the penalty. But again, this type of penalty does not apply to the vast majority of good people in St. Kitts and Nevis. It doesn't apply to us. It doesn't apply to the man down George Street just because he's from George Street. It does not apply to the man down in McKnight because he's from McKnight. It does not apply to the man in St. Paul's because he's from St. Paul's. Well, only them people rob. Nobody from any other community can rob. And sometimes, and that is why we cannot use people's address to determine what they are prone to do. That is wrong. And the people of McKnight, St. Paul's, and George Street should be totally and woefully disappointed in the statements made by the member from number 7.
Then one of us said Tabernacle, then he
He tried to, but he wasn't going to call it. And even the people of Tabernacle, I will defend.
Yes.
Not because they're from Tabernacle mean that they are robbers. That is wrong. And so, Madam Speaker, I just want to wrap it up very quickly with the point that we are implementing a number of programs across this country to give our people real chance at rehabilitation, chance of reintegration, a chance to build a good life. That is the balance that we seek. We are not punitive in our action fundamentally. We are, of course, dealing with this issue, as the member from number 3 would have pointed, from a public health perspective. But I think the member from number 6 hit the nail on the head when he spoke to this issue, that people want to feel safe. And I want to thank the member also from number 2, who is here representing. She has spoken already. I know she had the opportunity to speak. She would stand up again and defend the people from McKnight. And I'm going to defend the people from McKnight on her behalf in this particular instance. Madam Speaker, this country is made up of a vast majority of good people, and we want to encourage people who may not be in that category to get in that category extremely fast. But what we would not allow is for the very, very few who want to commit acts that are not in keeping with our laws, that we will take strong action to protect the innocent and those who need that protection from the law. So I wish this bill safe passage, Madam Speaker, and I hope that this bill does not have to apply to any citizen, because citizens will refrain from this type of criminal activity. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you to the honourable member for St. Christopher 8, the mover of the bill, who just did the wrap-up. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025 be read a second time. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Larceny Act, Cap 4.16, otherwise known as the Larceny Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill shortly entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a second time. House moves to committee stage. Proceed.
Clauses 1, 2, and 3.
The question is that clauses 1, 2, and 3 stand part of the bill. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes. Recognize the honourable member for St. Christopher 8.
Madam Speaker, with your leave, I rise again to report that the bill has passed through committee stage without amendment, and I further move that the bill be read a third time in this honourable House and be passed into law. May it please you, Madam Speaker.
The question is that the bill, seconder, apologies. Seconder? I recognize the honourable member of St. Christopher 2. Thank you, honourable member. The question is that the bill shortly entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025 be read a third time and passed into law. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Larceny Act, Cap 4.16, otherwise known as the Larceny Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill shortly entitled Larceny Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a third time and passed into law. Honourable members, before you proceed, I wish to rise for a brief moment. Upon the resumption, the Deputy Speaker will take over.
Today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Greetings. I'm here with Ambassador Kenneth Douglas in the Berks Sandy Point area, doing one of the projects that are listed on our resurfacing campaign in Public Works. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Ambassador for bringing these community roads to our attention. Sometimes when you're driving on the main roads and so on, even staff, they won't necessarily know all of the roads, so it takes community leaders like Kenny and others to indicate where there are some challenges in our road network. So I want to thank you for that. You have been a strong proponent. You haven't been giving me any rest, which is fine. And I gave the commitment that it will be part of our resurfacing campaign. And so after we did Southwell Drive, we've done industrial side, we're doing George Street at the moment. George Street has a lot of infrastructural additions to be done, taking up all the old pipes from underneath there that have been there for umpteen years, taking the opportunity to relay all of those pipes. So this was next in line to be done, and so we're grateful that we're here to fulfill that commitment. So tell me what your thoughts are of the road so far.
No, the road is smooth and nice. I'm also grateful that you all can come here and Public Works, and I want to thank Public Works and I want to thank yourself, Minister. And I want to thank the government of St. Kitts and Nevis also to answer the call, because you know I have been coming to you all the time, as you mentioned it, that we need this one and some others done. So I'm very, very happy, and I'm sure that the people of not just Sandy Point, but the people of this area itself, they are very, very happy also.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen of St. Kitts. Jerry here from Royal Utilities. We're at the Bird Rock desalination plant, and things are progressing. There's machines and men and barges. Everybody's working to put in the intake and the outfall pipes. Things are progressing.
House resumes. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 8.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, with your leave, I rise to lead the debate on a bill shortly entitled Gang Prohibition and Prevention Amendment Bill 2024. This was first read on the 18th of September 2024. Madam Speaker, for far too long, gangs have inflicted pain on our communities. If we were to reflect on the Caribbean reality, we would recognize that the issue of gangs, that issue has been on the agenda of all the countries within the Caribbean. Whether these countries are territories or whether these countries are independent countries. And so these gangs throughout the region are advancing. I want to say that the numbers tell the story. In dealing with this issue of violence and gang, I must take responsibility for national security, understanding that to deal with the issues of gangs and violence in a community, we have applied the public health approach. So a USAID criminal dynamic activities Madam Speaker,
We'll start by saying, Madam Speaker, that I had some concerns with the initial bill, which was passed in this House sometime, I think it could have been in September of last year. And the reason I had that particular concern, Madam Speaker, is that, to the best of my knowledge, the initial bill only allowed for the prosecution to be able to make the application for the judge alone trial. I recognize that in Section 5, number 3 amendment of Section 5, that the accused can now make that particular application. And I want to commend the mover of the bill in that particular respect, because I honestly felt that it was unfair for the prosecution only to be able to make it was on, I don't know how we got off. But when you took into consideration the fact that with regard to this particular piece of legislation, you do not have the right at this particular point in time to make an appeal in terms of the decision taken by the judge as to whether or not to grant the application to have the trial being heard by the judge only. Indeed, in terms of trials by judges alone, the statistics, the research would indicate a vast number of differences within various jurisdictions as to the outcome. We're still relatively early in terms of the usage of this particular piece of legislation, and I suppose that in time one will be able to analyze the full effects of it. Some of the research that I've looked at, for example, indicates that in some jurisdictions it has actually enabled more accusers to be acquitted. And there are various reasons which have been advanced for this. It is felt, for example, that because the judge has to give a written judgment and to be clear as to the reasons for his or her verdict, it places a greater burden upon the judge to really ensure that his or her reasons for finding someone guilty or innocent are well documented. In some instances, it has resulted in a shorter trial period for some cases, while in other jurisdictions, the research shows that there is a backlog of cases. One of the reasons given is not having a sufficiency of judges to be able to deal with the number of cases, or even in some cases having the physical space to be able to do so. In tempering my thoughts, Madam Deputy Speaker, I still would have preferred to some extent for there to be some leeway for one to be able to appeal the decision of the judge when deciding or when a decision is given as to whether or not to grant the judge alone trial. This particular legislation, as I pointed out, it doesn't provide for that. And I do believe that that perhaps is something that some further thought and some further consideration can be given to. whether it is you go before the magistrate court or before the high court, that is a right that you have in terms of making an appeal relative to the decision that has been granted, whether by the magistrate or the judge. In this particular case, you have no appeal until the substantive case has been heard, and then you are able to make that appeal before the court. So relative to that particular aspect of it, it is still something that, in my view, ought to change. I do believe that if I am accused of a particular crime, and whether it is myself or the prosecution who goes before the judge and asks for a judge alone trial to be handed down, that I should have some right to appeal the decision of the judge. So while this may help in some instances, for me, it removes that aspect, that right, which traditionally we have within our justice system. We are here, and I do believe that there is still the opportunity during committee stage to make that particular amendment. Perhaps in his wrap-up, the Attorney General might suggest the reasons as to why it is that one doesn't have the right to appeal at this particular stage. But again, as I said, that has been sort of a foundation. It has been grounded within our legal system. And for some reason, when it comes to trial alone by a single judge, that this particular right has been taken away. As I said, and I repeat, I do not agree with it, just as I didn't agree with the fact that prior to the amendment being made today, that only the prosecution was able to make an application for a trial to be heard by a single judge rather than being heard by a jury of his or her peers. Of course, there are those who still have that reservation because the jury system, one looks at being able to go to the court, having persons considered to be your peers being able to find you, whether it is innocent or guilty. Of course, in small societies, one has certain reservations also about that. You have the proliferation of the media. The jury can have biases, and when it comes to a decision by the jury, one really doesn't know what was the particular thinking coming from members of the jury as to why they would have arrived at a particular decision. In this case, as I said, the judge has a mandate to document the reasons given. And so in terms of any biases, I suppose that a judge has to be extremely careful in guarding against any of those particular biases. I will end by saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, that to a large extent, the jury is still out as to the effectiveness of this particular piece of legislation here in St. Kitts and Nevis, because throughout other jurisdictions which have been able to utilize it for quite some time, one is able to go and see research as to the results of it. May it please you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 5. I recognize the Honourable Attorney General to do his wrap-up.
May it please you, Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise to wrap up the debate on the bill shortly titled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025. and to start by directly addressing what has been referenced by the member for St. Christopher 5. In our Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court Act, there is provision in section 33(3)A. The reason I know it so particularly because I argued it in the Court of Appeal last year. That is a section that says orders in a criminal cause or matter cannot be appealed. And let me explain the reason for that, Madam Deputy Speaker. Because a criminal trial is so dynamic, there are lots of decisions that are made by judges and magistrates after charge. So the police, they prefer the charge. You go before a magistrate, originally, typically, and certain orders are made and decisions are made as to the process going up to the High Court trial. And even in the High Court trial, the judge makes numerous decisions. So the court decided in 1975 that any order or decision that is of a criminal nature within the proceedings, similarly termed interlocutory, are not appealable. So we actually, there's an appeal to the Privy Council being made by someone in St. Kitts and Nevis in the matter that I'm in, challenging that. But we will deal with that in the Privy Council. The court has said that is reasonable. The Court of Appeal has said it is reasonable. Previous Privy Council decisions have said it is reasonable because what the result of having numerous appeals would be is that what you're trying to prevent, which is to get swift access to justice, could actually be affected if there's an appeal on every single decision that's done in the process. So imagine, Madam Deputy Speaker, there was an appeal of the decision to move the matter to the High Court. You would have to wait a year, 2 years on the decision of that appeal, and then come back to the magistrate for the magistrate to then move it to the High Court. Imagine there was a decision of a judge, preliminary to trial, saying that this witness is not needed, for example. There would be an appeal, you would have to stay the trial for another year, 2 years, and then now you've added 4 years to the time before you actually get to trial. So the reason why that provision of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court Act is there is to prevent numerous appeals in one criminal action, get to the end, and then appeal everything at that point. And what is considered in the Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill is that there's no appeal for the decision of the judge to treat it as a judge alone, because that is considered an interlocutory order of the judge. So it aligns with what the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court Act says. Matters of this nature, if they were allowed to be appealed, would then delay justice. Whereas when the matter is also delivered, you can appeal and say, for example, this matter should have never been judge alone. I was prejudiced in some way. And the Court of Appeal can then strike down the entire judgment, and then the process could start over. But it's to eliminate the interlocutory appeals and the process being slowed down while it is moving through the criminal justice system. So I hope that is an explanation that the member can understand and also reflect to the persons he represents, given the position that he has taken, which is not wholly unreasonable. It is a good question, and it gave me an opportunity to explain why that aspect of trial, interlocutory matters that are done within criminal trials, are not generally appealable in the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. And then this type of interlocutory order is also not appealable. Madam Speaker, judge alone trials, as I gave the example of the UK, the UK's recent report, are one of the pathways to having an efficient justice system. And we, as an administration, listen. We're not bullies. We don't believe we know everything. And what we're doing is trying to do things that are in the best interest of all of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And after the original act was passed, even though it was sent for consultation before, that point was raised. Shouldn't the accused have an opportunity to apply for judge alone? It would be very rare, because of the reasons that are typically, the reasons that govern why there is a judge alone trial. For example, pre-trial publicity, persons are involved in gang activity. Those are matters typically for the prosecution. But you can see there might be some some small group of reasons why an accused themselves would want to have a judge alone trial rather than a jury trial. For example, if they thought their case was particularly complex and a juror would not be able to understand, then they could say, I prefer a judge who understands the nuances of certain evidence to give the judgment. It could also be that some of the evidence they wish to present in their defense is of a particular nature that a jury might not be appropriate. So that is why we came back and we sought to amend the Section 5 to allow for not only the prosecution to apply for a judge alone trial, but for the accused to have that opportunity. We believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this short amendment accomplishes what we want to accomplish, which is to create a fair system and so that to fit within an efficient justice system, so that anybody in St. Kitts and Nevis who interacts with the justice system doesn't feel that they're being treated unfairly, that justice is done, that their constitutional rights are protected, and we reach the point where we get from charge to completion of matters within that 18-month window which we have all agreed we wish to go to in the Commonwealth Caribbean. And this is one of the steps in that process. So with that said, Madam Deputy Speaker, I wish the bill safe passage through committee stage. May it please you.
Thank you, Honorable Attorney General. The question is that the bill entitled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025 be read a second time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Judge Alone Trials Act, number 20 of 2024, otherwise known as the Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill entitled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a second time. House moves to committee stage.
Clauses 1 through 5.
The question is that clauses 1 to 5 stand part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The enacting clause.
The question is that the enacting clause stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
The title.
The question is that the title stands part of the bill. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. House resumes. I recognize the Honorable Attorney General.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise to report that the bill shortly titled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025 has safely passed through committee stage without amendment, and I beg your leave for it to be read a third time and passed into law.
Seconder, I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 3.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
Thank you. The question is that the bill entitled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025 be read a third time and passed into law. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill to amend the Judge Alone Trials Act, number 20 of 2024, otherwise known as the Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025.
The bill entitled Judge Alone Trials Amendment Bill 2025 has been read a third time and passed into law. Next item on the order paper.
Motions, resolutions, adjournment.
I recognize the Honorable Member for St. Christopher 1.
Madam Deputy, I rise on the adjournment at this time just to share some information. I slipped out a few minutes ago, and I was engaged with some young persons who are here on a camp at the agricultural conference room, where we are celebrating 35 years with UNICEF. And of course, you know, on the signing of the ratification of the Convention on the Rights of the Child by our federation, and I was happy to spend a few minutes with them while I rushed back. And on the adjournment, I just wanted to express my sincere gratitude as a minister with responsibility for social development alongside the Honorable Iseline Philip, to publicly thank UNICEF for the work that they have been doing and the support they have given to this federation over this long period of time. There are quite a number of accomplishments that we would have been able to do or get done because of their significant, not only financial, but their technical support, and we look forward to their continued support. So I just wanted to express my gratitude and thanks to P.S. Clark and her team and the whole team that's there from UNICEF. Additionally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I thought it was important for me as a parliamentary representative in support of the Honorable Congress Maynard, who made presentation in this Honorable House last, making reference to the work that is being done on the George Street Road. I recognize and I realize that the road continues to be talked about, not always in the positive, but I'm happy to report that a road that would have been neglected for decades have been going under comprehensive renovations, and this was explained, Madam Deputy, to the entire community since in May. And we have completed the pipe replacements, and I went there 2 days ago, again, expressing my, I'd nearly say sympathies, but of course my apologies to the residents there, asking them to be a little bit more patient because we are going to deliver a first-class road. Because sometimes when you start work, you don't know what's under there, and we had a similar case on Southwell Drive. So I just want to express my thanks to the Honorable Congress Maynard and the Public Works team for the work that they continue to do in allowing us to be able to deliver the George Street Road, Madam Deputy. The drain, they had to redesign the drain because the drains that were there for maybe my lifetime no longer would have been able to match with the quality of resurfacing that would be laid, and they are doing that work. Right after that, they are going to be putting down the asphalt, by packing, and the asphalt again. To the residents on George Street, Newtown, I ask for your patience. I apologize for the dust, which is part of construction, regardless of what you're doing. And I ask you to bear with us as we deliver. Because you see, Madam Deputy, it is important for me to speak this way. Because there are some persons who seem as if their only way they are set out is to be negative. And we are making sure that we deliver. I am making sure that we deliver. Because when some persons give the impression that they are so concerned about a particular area, if that was the case, Madam Deputy, when the Honorable Congress Maynard parliamentary representative for number 3 was up in their area to give them a road where only 2 homes are there, I would have asked them to go and fix George Street. I am delivering George Street. May it please you, Madam Deputy.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 1. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 4.
Madam Deputy Speaker, with your leave, I rise on the matter of adjournment just to briefly speak about this weekend's activity as it relates to West Indies versus Australia here in sweet Sugar City, St. Kitts and Nevis. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are seeing the end of the tour, but what we are seeing here is the T20 series, the last 3 games here in St. Kitts and Nevis, played at our historic Warner Park. We see the games tomorrow evening at 7, Saturday evening at 7, and as well as Monday evening also at 7. So I want to take this time to invite our nation out to Warner Park to enjoy lovely cricket. Lovely cricket. Australia has come quite a ways here to the West Indies, and they're here on our lovely shores to play beautiful cricket here in St. Kitts. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like for all to join with me and welcome every single citizen in St. Kitts and Nevis out to Warner Park to enjoy West Indies versus Australia, the T20 games, Friday night, 7 p.m., Saturday night, 7 p.m., and Monday night, 7 p.m., because we home. We home here, St. Kitts.
Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Christopher 4. I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 3.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the occasion of the adjournment, I want to mention, of course, that next week starts our ICON Roots and Culture Children Summer Camp at the Dr. William Connor Primary School from Monday to Friday from 9 to 12 in the morning, and that has lunch, your T-shirt, and all the things you can learn about roots and culture from our heritage. So I think registration is already full, so just encouraging those who would have registered to come out and have an excellent week, and I want to thank the organizing team for the excellent work that they're doing, and all of the participants and the stakeholders who will be teaching our children to sew, to cook, to drum, to dance masquerade, to braid, all of those things that are unique to us. I want to thank also the member for number 1 for acknowledging the tremendous amount of work that is being done in the George Street area, and I too want to ask the residents of the area to bear with us a bit longer. If you notice, we have paved a number of streets since then, but that is because we only had to resurface those. So member from number 5 would notice that after a very long time, there are some brand new roads that are in Sandy Point, and I want to commend the ambassador for sports, Mr. Kenneth Douglas, for his unwavering commitment to pushing us to do that, and so we are continue to do that. The situation in George Street is that, of course, we had major infrastructure advancements to do. Water Services Department announced to me or informed me that they now finished their work in terms of laying all of the underground pipes. This is to minimize the need for when the road is paved that we have to go and dig it up again. Now, I'm not saying it won't happen, because you can always miss something, and then when you roll roads, you can also disturb pipes in the process. So we've tried very hard to not have to go back, and I think they're doing the drainage now, and as soon as that is finished, they're going to lay the road. George Street is a critical artery, actually, in the whole of St. Kitts and Nevis. Everybody knows where George Street is and how it links Bastia to outside of Bastia.
And yes, the member from number 1 is right that in other areas of this country we are doing significant roads, including where some of the persons who are questioning George Street presently reside. In fact, I had informed them that we would not discriminate against where they live and ensure that the brand new roads in Shadwell West and Shadwell South, that persons like them would not be left out. And it is true, they did not tell me wait and go and finish George Street, but you know, we understand that we are to be providing roads for everybody. And so I want to thank the member for that. We are serving the entire country, none is left out, whether it's West Bastia, Central Bastia, East Bastia, constituency number 4, constituency number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8. We are doing road rehabilitation in every single constituency around the country. And so thank you, member, for bringing that to our attention, and we will continue to do that. With that said, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to concur with my colleague, member from number 4, in inviting everybody out to a weekend of extraordinary cricket. We have, obviously, one of the giants of cricket here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I also want to take this opportunity to commend the extraordinary work of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. Many doubted that it was possible for us to have 2 major events at one facility in a matter of weeks. Many doubted that. And I want to thank the Ministry of Tourism, led by the Minister and representative from constituency number 2 and her team. In fact, I can think of one Mr. Bridgewater, Loftus, who spared no effort. I think he lost sleep and all to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis shows the world that we are capable of hosting the biggest ever music festival at the Warner Park Stadium, prepare the ground to host the biggest cricket matches in the Caribbean, and do it in style. If you go and take a look at Warner Park now, and we still have a few more weeks to go, yes, you will not believe. I want to thank the groundsmen for the work that they're doing, and it shows that once we put our minds to something, we make sure that the resources are available, and your plan, you can execute. It is in this very house I mentioned that across the globe, it is a traditional model, it is an established model that sports facilities are multi-purpose facilities. That if you plan properly, you can have both sporting events and you can have large concerts, but you just have to plan properly. Instead of sometimes thinking that you need one facility for something, another facility for something, with the limited resources that we have. Absolutely, Madison Square Gardens, but any facility, Hazley Crawford in Trinidad, for instance. And what we have to do is to manage them properly and make sure that we plan effectively. And so I want to commend all who are involved in that, from the Ministry of Sports, Ministry of Tourism, the groundmen who are taking tremendous pride in what they're doing, and we want to congratulate them because we're in for an excellent showing come this weekend. So I want to invite everybody to the cricket matches come this weekend, I think Friday, Saturday, and Monday evening at 7 p.m. With that, Madam Deputy Speaker, I now move a motion to have this House adjourned sine die.
Seconder, I recognize the Honourable Member for St. Christopher 1.
I second that motion, Madam Deputy.
The question is that this Honourable House stands adjourned sine die. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This Honourable House stands adjourned.
If you haven't done it as yet, please do it today. Subscribe to our YouTube page at SKNIS Media for regular updates, live coverage, and even more information on your government. While you're at it, like, share, and interact with our Facebook and Instagram pages at SKNIS Media and SKNIS Info.
Greetings, I'm here with Ambassador Kenneth Douglas in the Berks Sandy Point area, doing one of the projects that are listed on our resurfacing campaign in Public Works. I want to take this opportunity to thank the Ambassador for bringing these community roads to our attention. Sometimes when you're driving on the main roads and so on, even staff, they won't necessarily know all of the roads, so it takes community leaders like Kenny and others to indicate where there are some challenges in our road network. So I want to thank you for that. You have been a strong proponent. You haven't been giving me any rest, which is fine. And I gave the commitment that it will be part of our resurfacing campaign. And so after we did Southwell Drive, we've done industrial side. We're doing George Street at the moment. George Street has a lot of infrastructural additions to be done, taking up all the old pipes from underneath there that have been there for umpteen years, taking the opportunity to relay all of those pipes. So this was next in line to be done, and so we're grateful that we're here to fulfill that commitment. So tell me what your thoughts are of the road so far.
No, the road is smooth and nice. I'm also grateful that you all can come here and Public Works, and I want to thank Public Works and I want to thank yourself, Minister. And I want to thank the government of St. Kitts and Nevis also to answer the call, because you know I have been coming to you all the time, as you mentioned it, that we need this one and some others done. So I'm very, very happy, and I'm sure that the people of not just Sandy Point, but the people of this area itself, they are very, very happy also.